I thought Karen was just another annoying HOA president until she threw a scalding coffee pot at my 6-week-old daughter's face, breaking her tiny nose. What Karen didn't know was that I'm an FBI agent with 15 years of experience destroying people who hurt my family. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Marcus Thompson. 3 months ago I thought I had the perfect life. I was a senior FBI agent with 15 years of experience, living in a beautiful suburban neighborhood with my wife Sarah and our newborn daughter Emma. Emma was just 6 weeks old, with the most beautiful blue eyes and tiny fingers that would wrap around mine every time I held her. Sarah and I had saved for years to buy our dream house on Maple Street. It was a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. Or so we thought. The trouble started the day we moved in. As I was carrying boxes from the moving truck, a woman with short blonde hair and a permanent scowl marched up to me. She was wearing a bright yellow blazer with a badge that read, HOA President. "I'm Karen Williams, President of the Maple Street Homeowners Association," she announced, her voice sharp and demanding. "We need to discuss your landscaping immediately." I looked at our front yard. It was perfectly normal, green grass, a few bushes, nothing unusual. "What about it?" I asked politely. "Your grass is exactly 2.5 inches tall. HOA regulations state that grass must be between 2 and 2.25 inches. You're in violation." She handed me a bright orange violation notice. I stared at the paper in disbelief. "You're giving me a violation for grass that's 1/4 inch too long?" "Rules are rules," Karen snapped. "This is a respectable neighborhood. We maintain standards here." That was my first warning about Karen Williams. Over the next few weeks, the violations kept coming. My garbage can was 6 inches too far from the curb. My mailbox was the wrong shade of black. My car was parked at a 45-degree angle instead of straight. Each violation came with a $50 fine. Sarah was struggling with postpartum depression, and the constant stress from Karen's harassment wasn't helping. Emma had been a difficult baby from the start. She had colic and would cry for hours every night. Sarah barely slept, and I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "Marcus, I can't take this anymore," Sarah said one evening, holding a screaming Emma while tears rolled down her cheeks. "First the baby won't stop crying, and now this crazy woman is attacking us every day. I feel like I'm losing my mind." I held both my wife and daughter, feeling helpless. As an FBI agent, I was trained to handle the worst criminals, but I couldn't protect my family from this neighborhood bully. "Don't worry, honey," I whispered. "I'll handle Karen. We just need to follow her stupid rules for now." But Karen had other plans. The next morning I was getting ready for work when I heard shouting outside. Through the window, I saw Karen standing in our front yard, measuring our grass with a ruler while yelling at Sarah, who was holding Emma. "This grass is still too long," Karen screamed. "I'm reporting you to the city. You people have no respect for this neighborhood." Sarah was crying, trying to calm Emma, who was wailing from all the noise. I rushed outside. "Karen, that's enough," I said firmly. "You're upsetting my wife and baby." "I don't care about your baby," Karen snarled. "I care about property values. Your family is bringing down this entire street." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. This woman didn't care that she was terrorizing a new mother and a 6-week-old baby. "You need to leave our property now," I said, using my FBI training to keep my voice calm but authoritative. "Or what?" Karen laughed. "You'll call the police?" "I am the police in this neighborhood. I have connections at City Hall, the mayor's office, and the police department. You can't touch me." She was wrong about that, but she didn't know it yet. That night, after Sarah and Emma finally fell asleep, I sat in my home office and did what I do best. I investigated. Using my FBI resources, I started looking into Karen Williams. What I found was disturbing. Karen had been HOA president for 8 years, and in that time she had forced 17 families to sell their homes and move away. She used a combination of excessive fines, harassment, and connections with corrupt city officials to make people's lives miserable until they gave up and left. I found dozens of complaints filed against her, but somehow they all disappeared from the system. Karen wasn't lying about her connections. She had friends in high places who were helping her terrorize innocent families. But Karen made one mistake. She picked the wrong family to mess with. I started building a case file on Karen Williams and her network of corruption. Bank records, phone logs, email communications. I was going to expose everything. 2 weeks later, Sarah decided to take Emma for a walk around the neighborhood. It was a beautiful sunny day, and the doctor had said fresh air would be good for both of them. Sarah was walking past the community center when she saw other mothers with their babies gathering for what looked like a playgroup. Desperate for some adult interaction and hoping to make friends, Sarah approached with Emma in her stroller. "Hi," Sarah said to a group of women sitting on a bench. "I'm Sarah. We just moved to Maple Street. This is Emma." The women looked at each other nervously. One of them, a kind-looking woman with red hair, spoke up. "I'm Jenny," she said softly. "We'd love to chat, but Karen Williams told everyone not to associate with your family. She said you're troublemakers who don't belong here." Sarah's face went pale. "What?" "I'm sorry," Jenny whispered, looking around to make sure Karen wasn't nearby. "Karen has a lot of power here. She can make life very difficult if you cross her. Most of us are too scared to stand up to her." Sarah felt the tears coming again. She was being isolated and shunned like a criminal, all because of one evil woman's power trip. That evening when I came home from work, I found Sarah sitting in the nursery holding Emma and crying. "She's trying to destroy our life," Sarah sobbed. "She's turned the whole neighborhood against us. I have no friends, no support. I feel so alone." I held my wife and daughter, feeling rage building in my chest. Karen Williams had crossed a line. This was no longer about grass height or mailbox colors. This was about my family's well-being and my wife's mental health. It was time to fight back. The next Saturday morning, Sarah decided to attend the monthly HOA meeting. She wanted to address the harassment publicly and ask for it to stop. "Maybe if I explain about the postpartum depression and how hard it's been with the baby, they'll have some compassion," Sarah told me. I didn't think it would work, but I supported her decision. "I'll come with you," I offered. "No, I need to do this myself," Sarah said with determination. "I can't let this woman destroy my confidence completely." The meeting was held in the community center. About 30 residents attended, sitting in folding chairs while Karen stood at the front with a podium and a microphone. Sarah sat in the back row holding Emma, who was sleeping peacefully for once. Karen spent the first hour talking about upcoming events and budget issues. Then she opened the floor for new business. Sarah raised her hand nervously. "I'd like to speak, please." Karen's eyes narrowed. "State your name and address for the record." "Sarah Thompson, 245 Maple Street." Sarah stood up, still holding Emma. "I wanted to address the harassment my family has been experiencing since we moved here." The room went silent. Karen's face turned red with anger. "Harassment?" Karen's voice was loud and harsh through the microphone. "Following HOA rules is not harassment. Measuring our grass daily and giving us violations for a quarter inch is excessive," Sarah said, her voice shaking but determined. "Telling our neighbors not to associate with us is cruel. I'm a new mother dealing with postpartum depression, and your behavior is making it worse." Karen slammed her hand on the podium. "I don't care about your mental problems. If you can't handle living in a civilized neighborhood, maybe you should move." The crowd murmured uncomfortably. Even Karen's supporters seemed shocked by her cruelty. "Please," Sarah said, tears starting to flow. "I'm just asking for basic human decency. We're following your rules. We just want to live in peace." "Peace?" Karen laughed coldly. "You want peace? Here's some peace for you." What happened next changed everything. Karen grabbed the large coffee pot from the refreshment table. It was one of those industrial-sized metal pots that had been brewing coffee for the entire meeting. Steam was still rising from the spout. In a moment of pure rage and evil, Karen hurled the scalding hot coffee pot directly at Sarah and Emma. Sarah screamed and tried to turn away, but the heavy metal pot struck Emma directly in the face before crashing to the floor. Emma's piercing cry filled the room as Sarah collapsed to her knees, holding her injured baby. Blood was streaming from Emma's tiny nose, and her face was already swelling from the impact. "Oh my God." Jenny, the red-haired woman from the playground, rushed to help. "Someone call 911. Karen stood frozen for a moment, seeming to realize what she had done. Then her face hardened again. "She shouldn't have brought a baby to a meeting," Karen said coldly. "This is her own fault." The room erupted in chaos. Several people were shouting at Karen while others tried to help Sarah and Emma. Someone was calling the police. I got the call just as I was leaving the grocery store. Jenny had found my number and called me directly. "Your wife and baby need you at the hospital right now," she said, crying. Karen Williams threw a coffee pot at them. "The baby is hurt bad." I broke every speed limit getting to the hospital. When I arrived, I found Sarah in the emergency room, holding Emma while a doctor examined her tiny face. "How is she?" I asked, my heart pounding. "The coffee pot broke her nose," the doctor said grimly. "At 6 weeks old, this is very serious. We need to do surgery to repair the damage, but we have to wait until she's older and stronger." I looked at my baby daughter's face. Her perfect little nose was swollen and bruised. There was dried blood around her nostrils. She was crying weakly and I could tell she was in pain. Will there be permanent damage? Sarah asked through her tears. It's too early to tell, the doctor said. We'll need to monitor her closely. She may need multiple surgeries as she grows. I felt something break inside me. This innocent little baby who had never hurt anyone was now facing a lifetime of medical procedures because of one woman's cruelty. The police want to speak with you, a nurse said quietly. 2 officers were waiting in the hallway. They took my statement and Sarah's, but I could tell they weren't taking it seriously. We'll file a report, one officer said. But it sounds like it might have been an accident during a heated argument. An accident? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She threw a coffee pot at a baby. Look, sir, I understand you're upset, but Karen Williams is well respected in this community. She does a lot of good work with the HOA. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. That's when I realized Karen was right about her connections. Even the police were protecting her. But they didn't know who they were talking to. That night, while Sarah slept beside Emma's hospital crib, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my partner at the FBI, Agent Lisa Rodriguez. Marcus? It's 2 a.m. What's wrong? Lisa, I need a favor. A big one. I told her everything about Karen, the harassment, the corruption, and what happened to Emma. Jesus, Marcus. Is Emma okay? She will be, but she's going to need surgery. Lisa, this woman has been terrorizing families for years with help from corrupt city officials. She just assaulted a 6-week-old baby and the local police are covering for her. What do you need? I want to open an official FBI investigation into public corruption in this town. And I want to personally lead it. There was silence on the other end of the line. Marcus, you're too close to this. You can't be objective. Maybe not, I said, looking at my injured daughter. But I'm the best investigator in our division and you know it. Give me 30 days to build a case that will put these people away forever. Lisa sighed. 30 days. But if you go too far or break protocol, I'll pull you off the case myself. Understood. I hung up the phone and looked at Emma's sleeping face. Her tiny nose was still swollen and bruised. Daddy's going to make this right, baby girl, I whispered. I promise. The next morning, I took emergency leave from my regular duties and started working full-time on the Karen Williams investigation. First, I reached out to the 17 families that had been forced to leave the neighborhood. Using FBI databases and social media, I tracked them down across the country. The stories I heard broke my heart. The Johnsons had been an elderly couple who couldn't keep up with Karen's constantly changing landscaping demands. She fined them so heavily that they lost their house to foreclosure. The Martinez family had been immigrants who struggled with English. Karen used their language barrier against them, giving them violations they couldn't understand and then claiming they were ignoring the rules. The Patels had been a young couple with twin babies. Karen claimed their crying children were a noise violation, and harassed them until they moved away in desperation. Every story was the same, systematic harassment backed by corrupt city officials who made the violations legally binding. But the most shocking discovery came when I dug into Karen's finances. Karen Williams wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was running a sophisticated real estate scam. Here's how it worked. Karen would target families she wanted gone from the neighborhood. She would harass them with impossible HOA rules and excessive fines. When the families couldn't pay or got fed up and moved, Karen's brother-in-law, who was a real estate agent, would buy their houses at below-market prices. Then Karen's husband, who was a contractor, would do minimal renovations. Karen's sister, who worked at the tax assessor's office, would artificially inflate the property values. Finally, Karen's brother-in-law would resell the houses for huge profits. The family was making millions of dollars by forcing innocent people out of their homes. The corruption went even deeper. The mayor, 2 city council members, the police chief and several other officials were all getting kickbacks from the scheme. I had uncovered a conspiracy that had been operating for nearly a decade. Over the next 3 weeks, I worked 18-hour days building an airtight case. I obtained search warrants for bank records, phone records, and email accounts. I set up surveillance on Karen and her co-conspirators. I interviewed dozens of witnesses and victims. The evidence was overwhelming. I had financial records showing millions in illegal profits. I had recorded phone conversations where they discussed targeting specific families. I had documentation of falsified city records and rigged property assessments. But I wanted more than just financial crimes. I wanted Karen to pay for what she did to Emma. That's when I discovered Karen's dark secret. While investigating Karen's background, I found something that made my blood run cold. 20 years ago, Karen had been a daycare worker in another state. She had been fired and quietly prosecuted for child abuse after she was caught on camera roughly handling toddlers. The records had been sealed because the victims were minors, but my FBI clearance gave me access. Karen Williams had a history of hurting children. The coffee pot incident wasn't a moment of rage. It was part of a pattern of behavior going back decades. I now had evidence that Karen was not just a corrupt HOA president, but a dangerous individual with a history of child abuse. With Lisa's approval, I set up an elaborate sting operation. I created a fake identity as a wealthy businessman looking to buy property in the neighborhood. Using an undercover agent as my wife, we approached Karen's brother-in-law about purchasing a house. During our meetings, Karen's family openly discussed their illegal scheme. They thought they were talking to potential partners, so they laid out the entire operation in detail. We recorded everything. Then I went one step further. I had my undercover wife attend an HOA meeting and deliberately violate one of Karen's arbitrary rules. Sure enough, Karen took the bait. She began harassing my fake family with the same tactics she had used on everyone else. But this time, we had federal agents documenting every illegal action. The final phase of my plan required perfect timing. I leaked information to Karen that a troublemaker family was planning to move into the neighborhood, a family with multiple young children who didn't understand HOA rules. Karen's greed and hatred of families with children was too strong to resist. She immediately began planning how to target this new family before they even moved in. What Karen didn't know was that the new family was actually a team of undercover FBI agents with recording equipment. The trap was set. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 30 days after Emma was injured, I got the call I had been waiting for. "We have enough," Lisa said. Karen just offered to help our undercover family get rid of their neighbor's children by filing false abuse reports with social services. "We've got her on conspiracy to file false reports and conspiracy to commit fraud." "What about the assault on Emma?" "The hospital records and witness testimony are solid. Combined with her history of child abuse, we can make that stick too." "Then let's do this." At exactly 9 a.m., 23 FBI agents simultaneously raided 11 different locations across the city. Karen was arrested at her house while she was having coffee and planning her next harassment campaign. Her husband was arrested at his construction office. Her brother-in-law was arrested at his real estate office. Her sister was arrested at City Hall. The mayor was arrested in his office. 2 city council members were arrested at a breakfast meeting where they were discussing their next illegal payoff. The police chief was arrested at the police station in front of his own officers. In total, 15 people were arrested in connection with the conspiracy. I made sure I was part of the team that arrested Karen personally. When the FBI agents knocked on her door, Karen answered with her usual arrogant attitude. "What do you want?" she snapped. "I'm a busy woman." "Karen Williams, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, public corruption, assault on a minor, and violation of federal civil rights laws." Karen's face went white. "This is ridiculous. I know people. I have connections." "Yes, you do," I said, stepping into view. "And we've arrested most of them this morning." Karen's eyes went wide when she saw me. You're that troublemaker's husband." "Actually," I said, showing her my FBI badge, "I'm Senior Special Agent Marcus Thompson. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life when you hurt my daughter." The look of absolute terror on Karen's face was something I will never forget. During her interrogation, Karen tried every trick in the book. First, she claimed innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about." Then she tried to blame others. "My family forced me to do it." Then she tried to make excuses. "I was just trying to maintain property values." Finally, when confronted with overwhelming evidence, she broke down and confessed everything. "You don't understand," Karen cried. "These people were ruining our neighborhood. Families with screaming babies, immigrants who don't speak English, old people who can't maintain their properties. They were bringing down our property values. So you decided to drive them out illegally?" "We were protecting our investment. Everyone deserves to live in a nice neighborhood." "What about Emma? What about my 6-week-old baby daughter?" Karen's face hardened again, showing her true nature. "She shouldn't have been there. Children don't belong at HOA meetings." "So you decided to throw a scalding hot coffee pot at her?" I was angry. That woman was challenging my authority in front of everyone. That woman was my wife, asking you to stop harassing our family. Karen stared at me with pure hatred. I don't care who you are. I don't care about your stupid baby. I did what I had to do to protect this neighborhood. Those words sealed her fate. News of the arrest spread quickly through the community and then to the national media. FBI agent's baby attacked by corrupt HOA president was the headline in every major newspaper. The story had everything: government corruption, child abuse, an innocent baby victim, and justice served by her own FBI agent father. The community was in shock. For years, people had been afraid to speak out against Karen because of her connections. Now they learned that those same connections were part of a massive criminal conspiracy. Jenny, the red-haired woman who had helped Sarah at the coffee pot incident, organized a support group for all the families Karen had harassed over the years. We should have stood up to her sooner, Jenny told the local news. We let fear keep us silent while innocent families suffered. Never again. The trials began 6 months later. With the overwhelming evidence I had gathered, most of the defendants chose to plea bargain rather than face a jury. The mayor got 8 years in federal prison. The city council members got 6 years each. The police chief got 10 years. Karen's family members got sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years. But Karen herself refused to plea bargain. She insisted on going to trial, claiming she was the victim of a government conspiracy. Her trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 full days, presenting the evidence against her and describing what she had done to Emma. The jury took less than 4 hours to find her guilty on all counts. Karen's sentencing hearing was held on a cold December morning, exactly 1 year after she threw the coffee pot at Emma. Sarah and I sat in the front row with Emma in Sarah's arms. Our daughter was now 14 months old, and while she had recovered well from her injuries, she still bore a small scar on her nose from Karen's attack. Karen's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, claiming she was a pillar of the community who had made one mistake in judgment. Then it was my turn to speak. Your Honor, I said, standing up with Emma in my arms, Karen Williams didn't make one mistake. She spent years systematically terrorizing innocent families. She destroyed lives, broke up communities, and stole millions of dollars. I held Emma up so the judge could see her face. But her worst crime was throwing a scalding hot coffee pot at this innocent baby. Emma was 6 weeks old. She had never hurt anyone. She didn't even understand what was happening. Karen Williams looked at this helpless child and decided to use her as a weapon in her personal war against decency and humanity. Emma made a little cooing sound and several people in the courtroom started crying. Emma will carry the scars of Karen's cruelty for the rest of her life. Every time I look at my daughter's face, I'm reminded of what this woman did to her. But Emma is strong and she's going to grow up knowing that justice was served and that her father fought for her. I sat back down, holding Emma close. The judge looked at Karen with disgust. Mrs. Williams, in 30 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a combination of cruelty, greed, and complete lack of remorse. You have shown no empathy for your victims, no understanding of the harm you've caused, and no genuine regret for your actions. Karen stared back defiantly, still believing she was the victim. I hereby sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. You will also pay full restitution to all victims of your schemes, totaling $2.3 million. Karen's face went white. 25 years? For HOA violations. No, the judge said firmly. For conspiracy, fraud, public corruption, child abuse, and assault on an infant. Take her away. As Karen was led out in handcuffs, she turned back and screamed at me. This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll get out and I'll make you pay. Good luck with that, I said calmly. You'll be 78 years old when you're eligible for release. If you live that long. In the months following Karen's sentencing, our neighborhood transformed completely. A new HOA was elected with reasonable rules and compassionate leadership. Jenny became the new president, and her first act was to eliminate all of Karen's ridiculous regulations. The families who had been driven away began moving back. The Johnsons returned and were welcomed with a neighborhood block party. The Martinez family bought a house 2 streets over. The Patels decided to stay in their new city, but they sent a beautiful card thanking us for getting justice. Property values actually increased once Karen was gone and the neighborhood became a place where families wanted to live again. Sarah recovered from her postpartum depression with the help of therapy and a strong support network of neighborhood friends. She started a support group for new mothers that meets every week at the community center. Emma grew into a happy, healthy toddler. Her nose healed well, and while there's still a small scar, the doctors say it will fade as she gets older. She's walking now, and her favorite game is chasing our new puppy around the backyard. 6 months after Karen's sentencing, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a woman named Michelle Davis who lived in a different state. Dear Agent Thompson, the letter read, I saw your story on the news and I had to write to you. We have an HOA president in our neighborhood who is doing the exact same things Karen Williams did. She's targeting families with children and minorities, giving impossible fines and forcing people to move. I've been afraid to speak up because she has connections with local officials. But seeing what you did gives me hope. Can you help us? I showed the letter to Sarah. What do you think? Sarah looked at Emma, who was playing happily with her toys, completely unaware of the battle that had been fought for her. I think, Sarah said, that Karen Williams taught us something important. Evil wins when good people stay silent. If we can help other families avoid what we went through, we have to try. I called Michelle Davis that evening and connected her with FBI agents in her region. 3 months later, another corrupt HOA ring was exposed and shut down. Since then, I've helped investigate 6 similar cases across the country. It turns out Karen's scheme wasn't unique. There are corrupt HOA officials and local politicians running similar operations in communities everywhere. But now they know they're being watched. And they know that sometimes, the families they target have the resources to fight back. On Emma's 2nd birthday, we threw a big party in our backyard. The entire neighborhood came, including all the families who had returned after Karen was imprisoned. As I watched Emma playing with the other children, I thought about how different things could have been. If I hadn't been an FBI agent, if I hadn't had the resources and knowledge to fight back, Karen would still be terrorizing families today. How many other neighborhoods are suffering under similar tyrants? How many other children are being hurt by people who abuse their small amount of power? Jenny came up to me as I was watching Emma play. You know, she said, I've been thinking about what happened. Karen was evil, but she was also a coward. She only picked on people she thought couldn't fight back. Young families, elderly couples, immigrants, people who were already struggling. That's how bullies work, I said. They target the vulnerable. But she made one big mistake. She didn't realize that sometimes the people who look vulnerable are actually the strongest ones of all. I smiled, watching Emma chase Bubbles across the yard. She definitely picked the wrong family. Last month I got a phone call that made everything come full circle. Agent Thompson? This is Warden Patricia Hayes from Federal Correctional Institution in Pennsylvania. I'm calling about Karen Williams. My heart skipped a beat. What about her? She's been in solitary confinement for the past 6 months after attacking another inmate. The inmate she attacked was a young mother who was imprisoned for a non-violent drug offense. Williams specifically targeted her because she had photos of her children in her cell. I wasn't surprised. Is there something you need from me? Actually, yes. Williams has been asking to speak with you. She claims she has information about other HOA corruption cases that might be useful to the FBI. And you believe her? Honestly? No. I think she's just trying to manipulate the system to get better treatment. But I'm required to pass along the message. I thought about it for a moment. Tell her I said no. I have nothing to say to her, and she has nothing I need to hear. Understood. There's one more thing, Agent Thompson. I wanted you to know that Williams shows no remorse for what she did to your daughter. She talks about it regularly and she still claims she was in the right. I'm not surprised. Well, I wanted you to know that justice was served. She's not living comfortably in here. She's made enemies with almost every other inmate because of her attitude and her crimes against children. She's going to serve every day of that 25-year sentence in misery. After I hung up, I felt a sense of closure. Karen Williams was exactly where she belonged, and she would stay there for the rest of her life. Today, as I write this story, Emma is 3 years old. She's smart, funny, and full of energy. She loves books, dancing, and playing with our dog Max. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how far I took my revenge against Karen Williams. They wonder if I used excessive force or if I let my emotions cloud my judgment. My answer is always the same. I didn't get revenge. I got justice. Karen Williams wasn't punished because she hurt my family. She was punished because she spent years systematically violating people's civil rights, stealing their money, and destroying their lives. The assault on Emma was just the final crime that brought her down. Every family she drove away, every elderly couple she bankrupted, every immigrant family she terrorized, they all deserved justice. Emma was just the catalyst that finally brought it to them. Sarah and I still live in the same house on Maple Street. We've made lifelong friends here, and our neighborhood is now a place where families can thrive without fear. Emma doesn't remember what Karen did to her, she was too young. But someday when she's older, I'll tell her the story of how one evil woman tried to hurt her, and how her father made sure that could never happen again. I'll tell her that sometimes in life, You encounter people who use their power to hurt others. When that happens, you have two choices. You can stay silent and let them continue, or you can fight back and protect the innocent. I'll tell her that her father chose to fight. And I'll tell her that because of that choice, dozens of other families were saved from the same fate. That's the real lesson of this story. Evil wins when good people do nothing. But when good people stand up and fight back with everything they have, justice always prevails in the end. Karen Williams thought she was untouchable. She thought her connections would protect her forever. She thought she could hurt an innocent baby and get away with it. She was wrong. And now she has 22 more years in federal prison to think about just how wrong she was. As for Emma, Sarah, and me, we're living our best life in our dream house, surrounded by friends who care about us and neighbors who look out for each other. Sometimes the good guys really do win. If you're reading this story and you recognize yourself in Karen Williams, if you're someone who uses a small amount of power to make other people's lives miserable, let this be a warning. You never know who you're messing with. That young family you're harassing might have connections you can't imagine. That elderly couple you're targeting might have children who are lawyers, police officers, or federal agents. That immigrant family you're discriminating against might have more resources and determination than you ever expected. Most importantly, you never know when your victims will decide they've had enough and fight back with everything they have. Karen Williams thought she was the most powerful person in her little world. She found out the hard way that there's always someone more powerful. Don't be like Karen Williams. Be better. Treat your neighbors with kindness and respect. Use whatever power you have to help people, not hurt them. And remember that every family you encounter has someone who loves them and will fight for them. Because you never know when that someone might be an FBI agent with the skills, resources, and determination to bring your whole world crashing down.